So, mini camp is over, on to training camp. I can almost smell the pads, although they don't smell very nice. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. So, Browns minicamp, mandatory minicamp, came and went all 3 days. What a blast it was for everyone involved in Browns, fandom, not the players. I'm sure they had a great time, but just for everyone enjoying it on Twitter. It always, every year, is an event for the fans. It is, the memes we get, the reports we get, everything that comes out of it is just brilliant. I don't think any fan base does it better than the Cleveland Browns, but obviously just want to go over, what stood out for me, give my thoughts on Browns minicamp. We're obviously going to start with, what I said was going to be the story of the NFL. It seems to be the story of, American sports at the minute, which is the Cleveland Browns quarterback competition. We knew that eyes were going to be on this, but it's taken an even, it's gone even further than I thought that it would. And, I think a big part of that, as much as I want to hate Corey, you can't help but respect it. He's managed to push a narrative, especially, of course, with Shedeur Sanders at minicamp, that has even got Colin Cowherd and people like that talking about it and using his graphics. So credit to Corey. I want to hate him because he's kind of embodied everything not hate, but everything I don't like about the minicamp stuff, which is taking it way more seriously than it is. But I can't sit here and say it's not been hilarious, because it really has been. But obviously, talking about that quarterback competition, as I said, everyone's talking about it, everyone's arguing about it, everyone's debating about it. All I will say is, it's June. Chill. If any quarterback competition is not decided in June, especially not a quarterback competition that legitimately involves 4 guys that are competing for the job. We've had a few voluntary practices and now 3 days of mandatory practices. As I've said before, they're running installs, they're going through stuff like that. It's not the true competition. It's not, as Deuce Staley said, of course, with the running backs, but apply that to everyone. They asked him, how does he feel? And he said, while they're in pajamas, I can't really tell you anything. So, come back to me when they're in armor in July. So that applies to the quarterback competition as well. These guys are out there throwing in T-shirts. It's not a real indication of where this quarterback battle is going to end up, or even how it's going to unfold. I mean, everyone obviously wants to talk about Shedeur Sanders, understandably so. He is the main event. And of course, with him being the main event and not getting any first team reps, people are going to be like, well, the whole idea of that they're not giving him the fair shot gets brought up and stuff like that. But, the reason that Shedeur hasn't got any first team reps is because he's a 5th round pick and it's June. How many 5th round rookie quarterbacks do you know that have ever gotten first team reps in June? He will get his chance at training camp. They will give every guy an equal chance to win the job. I don't see how this regime can both be on the hot seat, yet also care more about looking, good about a draft pick over winning games, which would be, starting the best guy. That's what they will do. They will start the best guy. Whether you view that, whether you are someone that views that they are on the hot seat and you think that their jobs are on the line, then that should give you even more reason to believe that they will start the guy that they believe gives them the best chance of winning games. They will all get their chance. Charles Robinson reported that the Browns quarterback battle is a completely wide open affair, and that Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel could even be in contention to start week 1 if they start it, if they win the job. I've spoken about it for weeks now. It's I understand where the narratives are coming from and why it's a story. But in the end of the day, it is just a story. The Browns will give every guy an equal chance. The reason Shadeur's not got first team reps yet is because it's June. If he's not getting any first team reps at training camp, I'd understand. But let's wait till we get to training camp. I'm 100% certain that they will give every guy an equal chance, and may the best man win. But all of that aside, actually, from what we did see, I've said it 100 times already now, and even again in this video at the start, OTAs, minicamp, it's not, bullets aren't firing. They've got the practice wheels on. They're mainly just out there running installs, working on technique, timing, getting to know the offense, getting to know the defense, getting to know their teammates, their coaches, all of that stuff. It really is kind of training wheels stuff. So, you can't put too much stake into what you see. As I've said before, for me, it's in these kind of formats, it's not so much what I see, it's what I don't see. I don't want to see a quarterback out there not able to, get a play off, not able to even make a read, things like that. You want to see him be able to operate in a huddle, in a 7v7 environment, because if they can't, then they're not going to be able to do that in 11v11, on the field, in an actual game. So, from, as I said in the OTAs, the same again with the minicamp, I've not seen anything from any of these quarterbacks that worries me at this point. Would I like to maybe seen a bit more from a Kenny Pickett? Yes, but I've not seen anything, like I said, that makes me go, yeah, this guy is not going to be able to run this offense, or I just don't think this guy is good. As I said, this is not the format to show that. This is just to show if they can do the basic things, essentially. And as I said, I have no concerns that any of these guys can do those things. As expected, as I predicted, Kenny Pickett, Flacco, of course, viewed as 1 and 2 right now. They are the two most experienced guys. They are the two guys that aren't the rookies. So, of course, they are to be viewed as 1 and 2. They did seem to get, majority of the first and second team reps in those formats. Although, Flacco didn't actually get as many reps as, maybe people would have thought. But that's obviously when he did get reps, it was with the first and second team mainly. But I think that's just because, they know what they have in Flacco. He's 40 years old. He's, this isn't his first rodeo. He's been here before, literally been here before in terms of being in Cleveland before and being successful in this offense. They know what they've got in Flacco. So I'm glad that they're giving more reps to the other three guys, because they're the guys that you want to be able to, see what you have in them. Whereas with Flacco, you kind of already know that. So, yes, Shedeur didn't get any of the first team reps, but in the reps that he did get with the second team, with the third team in 7v7, 11v11, continues to impress, continues to look good. As I said, you can't put too much stake into this stuff, but from what we have seen on the field and off the field, continue to be really impressed with Shedeur. I said it, I think, last February, way before the even draft kind of buzz and talk even, amplified, and even before the draft, that, Shedeur Sanders' attitude and demeanor impresses me. And I think it is, if he is to be successful, that is something that would be a big reason why. That's why I was quite confused with the draft fall and the kind of reports that came out of that, because everything that I had seen from Shedeur Sanders did not make me believe that he had that kind of personality and was that kind of person. And he's only just proved those kind of people wrong and myself right since he's been here. Because, as I said, off the field, every interview, everything, whether Mary Kay is trying to catch him out with a stupid question or not, it doesn't matter. I don't think there's ever been a more media trained 5th round pick, if we're being honest, but also not just the fact that he's well media trained. As I said, he's got a great attitude, and I think that will take him far. But from what we have seen on the field as well, in the limited capacity that is mandatory minicamp, impressive stuff. Looks like he can make the throws. Doesn't look like you have, people had concerns about arm strength and stuff like that. None of those concerns seem to be, showing. obviously with the few deep passes that have been the kind of highlights of the Browns mini camp highlights this week. We've seen a few of those. So as I said, been impressed with Shedeur, everything that I've seen from him up until this point, and through mini camp as well. Dylan Gabriel, it's hard because we just don't get shown as not. Understandably so, Shedeur Sanders, as I've said, he's the main event. He's the big attraction. He's the one that sells the tickets. He's the reason why this video is probably going to have him in the thumbnail. We all know how it goes. So with Dylan, we've not really. It's hard to make the assessment. From what I have seen, as I said, not seen anything to be worried about. I've seen him out there making a few good throws. Him and Jerry Jeudy connected on quite a few. Him and Jamari Thrash, from what I have seen, but it's just limited because, the Browns social media team, though, they put out a video of Dylan Gabriel and it gets, 20,000 views, and they put out a video of Shedeur Sanders and it gets 2 million views. They're aware of that. Even the beat reporters, anyone that's at minicamp that's able to have a camera and videoing. They seem to be aiming it at Shedeur Sanders a lot more than Dylan Gabriel, which is understandably so. But as someone that's trying to obviously objectively, just look at it just purely from the two guys and what we've seen, it is a little bit annoying because, of course, you want to be able to see equal amount from both guys to make that assessment. But as I said, from what I have seen, nothing to be worried about, and looks more than capable. Arm strength was not an issue for me. I know it was for some people, just because he's 5'11", they assume that he has bad arm strength. But as I said, when they drafted him, arm strength's not a concern for me, and has not been a concern during minicamp. Kenny Pickett, as I mentioned, is probably, if you could say anyone's struggled the most, you could probably say Kenny Pickett. But when I mean struggled, he's been with the first team reps. He's taken the most first team reps, so he's gone up against the first team defense the most. So that's why you can't really take too much stake into this. Everyone's seen the stats breakdown that they've been tracking, and all of the numbers and attempts, completions, touchdowns, interceptions from all four guys. And while some guys, obviously Shedeur's looks a lot more impressive, when you factor in the context that he's been going up against the third team defense, and someone like Kenny Pickett's been going up against the first team defense. That's just why you shouldn't take too much stock into that. It's why I don't care about any of those graphics, to be honest. Yes, I've not seen Kenny Pickett lighting it up, but he's been going up against the first team defense. Defense is always going to be further along at this point than the offense is. That's the same for really any NFL team. It's actually a surprise if it's the other way round, and to be honest, it's probably a concern if it's the other way round. So you always expect the defense to be ahead of the offense. So again, quarterbacks, it's going to be an open battle. I don't buy into any of the, they're favouring any guys because they picked them higher. Yes, when you go into this, OTA period, of course, things like draft position is going to have a basic kind of influence on just where you have it stacked up going into it. But once t-shirts are on and they're throwing, and especially once pads are on and they're throwing, none of that stuff matters. Every guy will get the equal opportunity, and looking forward to it. Moving on, everyone is, of course, still pretty raw about Nick Chubb, and rightfully so. I mean, I think we probably all cried reading that goodbye post from Chubb last night. But, as I said in my last video, whilst it sucks, don't let it take away from your excitement for the Browns' new rookie running backs, especially Quinshawn. As I've said before, it's hard to get much of a feel for any position during OTAs, let alone running backs. But from what we have seen, he looks the part as a number one back in the NFL. He's big, he's strong, and he is freakishly athletic, man. Even in practice, the speed and explosiveness on his cuts is more than noticeable. Some of the clips we've seen have been, quite frankly, ridiculous. To look that explosive on your cuts in practice, I am very excited. I keep on saying it. really excited to see what Twinshon can do in year one, and really excited to see what this running back, duo can do. Chuck Jerome Ford as the third back into that as well. I know everyone wants to hate on Jerome Ford right now. If you want to understand why I'm not in that boat, you can go watch the video that I made on Nick Chubb and stuff like that. But, yes, it sucks that Nick Chubb is no longer here. But as I said, don't let that take away any excitement for the Browns run game next year. I expect the Browns run game to be a lot better than it was the previous 2 years. Is that because Nick Chubb's left? No, that's not the reason. Of course, there's so many reasons that went into the Browns' run game being as poor as it was the last 2 years. But with the revamp, the overhaul this offseason, especially at running back, I'm excited to see what the running back and this run game can do next season. The D-line, I mean, are we surprised that it looks like the best unit on the team? I'm not. Even in OTAs, they were blowing up a lot of plays. And, I think everyone saw that Myles Garrett play where he stopped right before getting to Dylan Gabriel, which is good because, if he had tackled him and, if he had gone into him, then, the damage he would have done is probably illegal in all 50 states and the United Kingdom. So good thing that he didn't, and we probably would be down to 3 quarterbacks for a 3 quarterback battle than a 4-man quarterback battle. So well done, Myles, for stopping early. Speaking of Myles, he's out there looking like he can take on the fucking Avengers. Like, it is genuinely insane. He looks faster than normal. He looks bigger than normal. He looks stronger than normal. I don't know how he does it. Every single year he walks out onto that field, whether it's mini camp, training camp, and he just you don't even need to watch him play. You just look at him stood there and you can understand why he's the best in the world at what he does. And then you see him go and do a basic drill and you're like, yeah, that's why he's the best in the world. I feel sorry for anyone that has to go after Myles in any of these drills. I would be so embarrassed because it's very impressive. Everyone that was moaning about him not being there at voluntary OTAs, and saying that he needs the practice and stuff like that, I think quite clearly shown that he doesn't need to be there for voluntary OTAs for the practice. I mean, where you can make an argument about him being there for, just leadership reasons, but in terms of just purely on the field, working on your craft practice, there's no need for him to be there. When he needs to show up, he shows up, and that's what he looks like. He is a genuine freak of nature. They've all challenged him to have his best season yet. He's challenged himself, so hopefully that's what we see from Myles next year. Great also to see Alex Wright out there looking healthy. He had 5 sacks in his last 8 games that he played, and really started to come along before getting injured last year. So good to see him back healthy, and hopefully can stay healthy next year and continue in his development. Malik Collins looks as advertised from what I've seen. He's shown his ability in the drills as a pass rusher, with a pretty wide variety of pass rush moves that I've seen, and combos on show, which is pretty impressive for a player his size. And all of this thing kind of combines to why I do think the Browns could be one of the better defensive lines in the NFL next year. I've said it before. I think it's the best unit on the team. I think it could be what prevents them from being one of the worst teams in the league next year. I just think this defense, and especially this defensive line, is going to be too good to sink the team to that level. I think they will only, rise the team's level. The linebacker room is funny because it's the deepest it's been in years. I've joked about it so many times about how Andrew Berry and this front office might, I think, forget that linebacker is even a position, just with how little they have invested in it. The last year or so, they've decided to actually put a focus on it. And as I said, I think it's the deepest it's been in years. Of course, it sucks not having JOK. If JOK was healthy, I think this would probably be one of the better linebacker units in the NFL. But I still think it has a chance to be a really, really good unit. Carson Schwessinger, I expect to be a day one impact player for this team, even as a rookie. Jordan Hicks, if he can stay healthy, he looked solid last year, good vet. Diabate, really, really promising last year. Cam Justice reported that, one of her key takeaways from just minicamp as a whole was seeing Diabate out there, just seemed to be everywhere. Devin Bush, of course, maybe things happen between now and the season that he's not there, but if he is there, he was more than serviceable last year. And, Winston Reid, I've said a few times on here, he really impressed me last year in the limited snaps that he got. He looks like he could be a pretty good depth piece as well. So I expect this Browns linebacker room to, look as good as it has really any year under this current regime. So excited to see what those guys, especially Carson Schwessinger, can do next year. More offense. It's good to see Deontay Johnson out there. Of course, he wasn't out there for any of the voluntary practices, but he was there, of course, for mandatory. So luckily, him, Njoku, and Miles, all three guys that weren't at voluntary OTAs, were at mandatory. So I didn't have to do any videos about why this player hasn't turned up to mandatory camp. So thankfully that they all turned up. It was absolutely hilarious. We got just an all-time classic quote from Deontay Johnson when asked, what kind of led to his decision of signing with the Browns, and he said, "Well, I'll be completely honest, they're the only team that reached out." And some people might not like that, but I respect the honesty. Like, the end of the day, I respect the honesty. Maybe that. Well, I say maybe. Hopefully, that humbles him a bit. He puts all of that experience last year behind him, and he can come out. I mean, this was a guy that was a second-team All-Pro not even that long ago, within the last 4 years. So hopefully he can put all that stuff behind him, use that as motivation and come and have a really good season for the Browns. But, of course, the Browns wide receiver room does look like the room with the most questions outside of quarterback. Judy has been carrying the load. Even at camp, and I of course expect that to be the same in the season if nothing changes, and if that's the case, I expect a big year from him. Jamari Thrash has looked decent and got some first team reps actually, which Stefanski said was because the QBs just really like him. They like how he's able to get open, especially in zone. So they wanted him on, those guys wanted him for the first team reps, and he got those first team reps. So, hopefully he can kind of kick on after a, underwhelming, shall we say, rookie season, because we need one or two of these guys to step up in this room if it's going to be a serviceable wide receiver unit next year. And another one of those guys is, of course, Cedric Tillman, who finally practiced on the third day of minicamp. He hasn't practiced at all this off season. I'll be honest, I was getting really worried. A concussion, keeping someone out for 6+ months, that sounds pretty concerning to me. And the fact that it just wasn't even being spoken about, or the Browns didn't really seem to treat it that seriously, was getting quite weird. So if he had not practiced at all, I might have even probably done a whole video on this. But he practiced. He seems to be, fine. So pretty weird situation. I'm sure more stuff will come out in the future about what led to him not being able to even practice for 6 months. But great to see him out there. As I said, if the Browns wide receiver room stays as it is, they are going to need one or two of those guys to step up. And, the two most likely candidates are Cedric Tillman and Jamari Thrash, if they don't bring anyone else in. But, personally, I would like them to bring in another wide receiver, at least a borderline starting caliber wide receiver. As mentioned with the running backs, of course, the run game that needed revamping, a big part of that was the offensive line. The Browns, they invested in that this offseason, mainly in free agency, only in free agency. I did like the moves that they made, but it is good to see, the O-line out there healthy, because that's the most important thing. That's what has derailed this unit the most the last couple of years. It got to the point where we were making jokes that the tackle position is cursed for the Browns. If you're a tackle and the Browns want to sign you, don't, because you will get injured. It just felt like every tackle that we put in, the backup's backup tackle was getting injured at one point last year. It was just ridiculous. So that's the most important part. So, yes, it's June. A lot can happen between now and the season, but at least at this point, it is good to see, those guys out there healthy, especially Dewan Jones and, of course, Jack Conklin. Dewan Jones still looks noticeably slimmer, which, he credited to a more regimented diet. So hopefully he can keep that up because, as I've said before, he's got all the talent. He just needs to be able to be more consistent, stack games, be healthy, and a big factor in achieving that will be, to stay at a more slimmer build. And, if he's able to do that, then, sky's the limit, really, for Dewan Jones, because, as I said, the talent is there. But that's my thoughts, kind of overall, from what I've seen from all the position groups, all the players out of minicamp. Again, I'll say it for the 150th time, it's minicamp. Don't take too much stock into it. Real bullets start flying at training camp, where we'll really get to see what these guys have, especially the quarterbacks, and especially that quarterback battle. We will understand how this team, coaching staff is going to operate their quarterback battle come July. We will get a real taste of what their plan is for these guys, and cannot wait to see all four of them at training camp getting an equal opportunity, because again, I know people want to make the argument, there's a narrative that they're going to favour certain guys over others. They're going to play the guy that they believe gives them the best chance to win. It's as simple as that. Whether you think they're on the hot seat or not, if you do, then that should just be even more of an argument for that. They're going to start the guy that they think has the best chance to win. So looking forward to that battle in training camp. Looking forward to seeing the progression of obviously all the other rookies, all the other young guys. School is out for summer. So Browns players, please, please, please don't do anything stupid. Don't get arrested. Be smart. Have fun, but just be smart in what you do. No going for, some random jet ski event and thinking I could backflip this. None of that. Absolutely none of that. Be sensible, and Miles, wrap yourself in bubble wrap. Whilst the players will break up for a few weeks, they'll get, I think is actually their longest kind of holiday period they get in the year. NFL might be a short season, but it truly is all year round with everything that's involved within it. So they'll get a few weeks off. I'll still be here making weekly Browns content. I won't be, gallivanting in wherever it is they go. Where's the Cancun? That's it. I won't be gallivanting in Cancun. I will be here making weekly Browns content from all things, position group rankings, roster predictions, all of that good stuff. As I said, still making weekly Browns videos, even in the off season. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of that content. But that will do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy my content, then please, as always, drop this video a like. Again, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. I encourage everyone to, drop me messages, whether it's, video ideas, or you just want to chat about Browns, or you just want to chat about your cousin's new cat. I don't care. I love talking to Browns fans. So whether that's a comment, message, tag, whatever it is, social media, YouTube, hit me up. I really do encourage it. But as I always say, I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and even if that means I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy, because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing weekend. I hope the weather is as marvellous as it currently is here in the UK, wherever you are in the world watching. But most importantly, go Browns.